Let my daddy go. These charges are false. The voice was small, fragile even, but it sliced through the heavy silence of the courtroom like glass against stone. Heads turned at once. Some people chuckled softly, others exchanged amused glances. It wasn't every day that a child stormed into a trial. On the bench, Judge Raymond shifted his gaze from the case file to the young girl standing just beyond the wooden barrier. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Her hands were clenched at her sides, her eyes shining not with tears, but with unshaken determination. "This is a court of law," the judge said firmly. "Children don't decide guilt or innocence here. Bailiff, remove her." But before the officer could move, the defendant, Darius Moore, suddenly leaned forward from his chair, chains clinking around his wrists. "Your Honor," his voice cracked, "please, let her speak. She's my daughter. Just a few words. That's all." The courtroom rustled with murmurs. The prosecutor smirked, shaking his head. "This is ridiculous. Theatrics won't erase evidence." Judge Raymond raised a hand to silence the room. His eyes remained on the girl. Something about the steadiness in her posture unsettled him. "You said these charges are false," he said slowly. "Do you even know what those charges are?" Hope nodded once. "They say my dad stole money, that he lied, but he didn't. He's not that kind of man. He works all night so I can go to school. He fixes broken cars for people who can't pay him. He helps our neighbor bring groceries inside. He doesn't even take money sometimes because he says kindness is worth more." A ripple of laughter came again, though quieter this time. But the judge did not smile. Darius swallowed hard. His voice shook as he spoke. "Your Honor, I have been called a thief, a fraud, a liar, but I have never taken a coin that wasn't mine. These accusations," he glanced at his daughter, then back at the bench, "they are built on shadows, not facts." The prosecutor stood sharply. "Objection. He is trying to re-argue. Sit down," the judge ordered. His tone wasn't harsh, just commanding. He turned back to the defendant. "If that's true, then why does the evidence say otherwise? Documents, signatures, testimonies? Are you saying all of that is a lie?" Darius lifted his chained hands. "I am saying someone wanted me here. Someone stronger, richer, louder than me. And yes, the papers are marked, the testimonies rehearsed, but they don't tell the truth. She does." He nodded toward Hope. "My little girl tells you who I am, not those pages." For the first time that day, Judge Raymond's stern mask wavered. He leaned back in his chair, tapping the file with one hand. The girl's words rang uncomfortably in his ears. Hope hadn't cried. She hadn't begged. She had simply spoken, clear, steady, certain. And for reasons he could not explain, her voice carried more weight than the thick stack of documents in front of him. The judge's eyes drifted back down to the file. For years he had trusted papers, signatures, seals. Yet, as the courtroom sat in tense silence, he felt a flicker of something else. Doubt. And doubt, in a place built on certainty, was dangerous. Judge Raymond sat motionless, the weight of silence pressing on the courtroom. His fingers rested on the edge of the thick file, tapping lightly, as though the papers themselves were whispering doubts he had long ignored. He cleared his throat. "Bailiff, bring me the original contract documents again." The prosecutor frowned. "Your Honor, those have already been examined. Twice." "Then a third time won't hurt," Raymond replied calmly, though his voice carried an edge. The bailiff quickly fetched the files, placing them on the polished wood. The judge adjusted his glasses and began flipping through the pages with unusual care. Hope stood silently now, her hands clasped in front of her dress. She didn't interrupt, didn't cry. She only watched. Raymond's eyes narrowed. He tapped a page. "This signature," he said, pointing to a contract. "Look closely. The pen pressure here is uneven. The ink trails off, almost as though it was traced." The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably. "That's irrelevant. Minor handwriting variations." "Minor," Raymond interrupted, his gaze sharp. "Or deliberate?" He turned a few more pages. His finger stopped again. "And here, the date is written in a format inconsistent with the rest of the file. Every other document uses month, day, year. This one, day, month, year. Sloppy for a man accused of handling millions, wouldn't you say?" Murmurs swept the courtroom. The prosecutor's jaw tightened. Darius leaned forward, his chains clinking softly. That's what I've been saying, Your Honor. I never wrote those numbers. Someone wanted me to look guilty. Hope finally spoke, her voice steady but piercing. If my dad was guilty, he wouldn't still be saying the same thing every day. Guilty people give up when no one believes them. But he didn't. The words landed like stones in still water, rippling through the room. Even the stenographer glanced up, her eyes momentarily meeting the judge's. Raymond adjusted in his wheelchair, uncomfortable. For years he had believed evidence was iron, unshakable. But what if the iron had rust? What if the foundation itself was cracked? The prosecutor rose sharply. Your Honor, with respect, this is a distraction. The state's case is strong. And this child's sentiment should not sway a federal bench. Raymond looked up, his voice cutting through the protest. It isn't sentiment when it exposes inconsistency. He closed the file slowly, resting his palm on top of it. The law demands facts, and when facts don't align, justice demands we look again. Hope exhaled softly as though a weight had lifted. Darius's shoulders shook. For the first time in months, there was something in his eyes other than despair, something fragile but real. Hope had placed it there. The judge's gaze swept the room. He saw nervous faces, restless hands, people who suddenly weren't so certain anymore. His own certainty, the very shield he had lived behind for 10 long years, was cracking. He took a deep breath. This court will reconvene tomorrow morning, he declared. Until then, no further arguments. And the prosecution, he added, fixing his gaze firmly on the state's attorney, bring me every original record, every testimony transcript, and every financial log. We will examine them word by word. The gavel struck once, sharp and echoing. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as people rose from their seats. But as Raymond closed the file in front of him, he knew something had already shifted. Justice wasn't about weight of paper anymore. It was about the weight of truth. The next morning, the courtroom was packed, tighter than before. Word had spread of the unusual turn in the Moore trial. People wanted to see whether the child's bold words and the judge's sudden doubts would truly change anything. Judge Raymond entered slowly, his wheelchair rolling across the polished floor. His face was unreadable, but inside his mind the storm raged on. Overnight, he had reread the files, compared signatures, traced dates. The cracks in the evidence were no longer whispers. They were fractures, bold and undeniable. Court is now in session, the bailiff announced. The prosecutor wasted no time. He rose immediately, voice sharp and confident. Your Honor, the state stands by its evidence. Emotional distractions cannot erase fraud. The defendant's bank statements, contracts, and testimonies all align. Do they? Raymond cut in, his tone steady. Let us examine. He motioned to the clerk, who placed a stack of documents before him. One by one, the judge held them up. This signature, he said, was clearly traced. My handwriting expert confirmed it late last night. The pen pressure drops at unnatural angles. He flipped to another page. This testimony, look here. The witness claimed to meet Mr. Moore at 9 p.m., but the restaurant receipt places him across town at the same time. Contradiction. Gasps echoed in the courtroom. The prosecutor's face flushed red. Mistakes, Your Honor. Minor errors. Nothing that changes the full scope of guilt. Raymond's eyes hardened. The law does not measure guilt by weight of paper, sir. It measures by truth. And truth does not allow mistakes this large. Darius sat silently, his eyes moist. His daughter Hope, sitting just behind him, squeezed her small hands together, her heart pounding. Raymond turned toward the defendant. Mr. Moore, you have maintained your innocence since day one. Why? Darius's voice trembled, but it carried. Because I am innocent. Because no matter how heavy their evidence looked, I knew the day would come when the cracks would show. My daughter reminded me of that yesterday. She reminded me that truth doesn't need to shout, it only needs to stand. The room grew utterly still. Even the prosecutor, for all his fire, had no quick reply. Raymond slowly closed the file in front of him. For years, he had trusted documents, witnesses, lawyers. But here today, something far greater had spoken. Integrity, resilience, and a child's unshaken belief in her father. This court, Raymond said, his voice firm and echoing, finds the charges against Darius Moore to be unsupported, inconsistent, and tainted with error. Therefore, the defendant is declared not guilty. The gavel struck once, loud and final. The courtroom erupted, some in disbelief, others in cheers. Darius dropped his head into his chained hands, shoulders shaking with relief. When the bailiff unlocked his cuffs, Hope ran to him, her tiny arms wrapping around his neck. Tears streamed freely now, but they were tears of freedom, not despair. "Daddy," she whispered, "I told you they'd see." He kissed the top of her head. "Yes, Hope, you told the truth, and the truth saved me." Even Judge Raymond, hardened by decades of trials, felt something stir deep within him. For once, the law had not been a cage of papers. It had been a window through which light, however fragile, had broken through. As people filed out of the courtroom, whispers lingered. This was more than a verdict. It was a reminder that sometimes the smallest voice could move the heaviest walls. And that was the story of a daughter's courage and a father's fight for justice. What do you think? Can truth really survive against power and lies? Tell us in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Because sometimes the stories you watch can change the way you see the world.